Hi everyone, this is an energy update for the winter solstice here in Australia. Obviously the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. Winter solstice is one of my favourite days of the year as it signals the shortest day of the year here in the southern hemisphere. And obviously the days are getting longer and we're slowly returning to the sun, to the light. I'm not a big fan of the cold and short days, so I really like the solstice because it effectively means it's a turning point. Solstice is Latin for sol, meaning sun, and stis, standing still. So it's the effect of the sun standing still at this time. And it's one of the four cardinal points, the two solstices, the two equinoxes, giving this idea of the four cardinal points, which is important for a number of esoteric reasons, which I won't go into now. But this Saturday, 21st of June, 12:42 p.m. Queensland time, marks the winter solstice. So it's on a Saturday this year, so enjoy that. It's a good time for contemplation, for reconnection, and it's like a shift in a certain way of a certain quarter of the year as we move gradually towards the spring equinox. So it's a good time for meditation, for reflection, for contemplation, and for increasing our self-awareness. So this particular energy update I'm going to make with a series of videos over the next few days, so stay tuned for those. So I'll break it down a little bit because there's a lot to cover and I haven't been making that many videos. So a lot is changing. The bifurcation and splitting in consciousness has accelerated a lot this year, more than I actually thought it would. The pace of events is picking up more than I thought it would. And overall, we're in this time of the quickening, this acceleration of events, which is causing a lot of turmoil, and it's also creating a lot of loosh as people just sort of emotionally connect with one event to the next without really processing or digesting what that means to them personally. There's just constant outrage on the internet, on social media, and that's only going to intensify, by the way. And the real question really comes is, this paradigm is in terminal decline. I wrote about this in the book that I wrote 5 years ago. So it's no mystery to me what obviously is unfolding the way it's taking shape. That this paradigm will continually, at this point now, it'll probably crumble, not collapse. I think that's what it will look like. But what's significant is, how do we navigate through that personally, spiritually, psychologically, emotionally? Because what is not a solution is just to simply go doom scrolling and posting on the internet about how bad everything is, and it's bleeding into the mainstream at this point. And so people are asking the question, when are people going to wake up? Well, in my view, depending how you define that expression or that term, wake up, 90% of the population, perhaps more, will awaken to a degree. The question is, how deep is it going to go? Much more elevated will their consciousness become through the beginning of this journey? And also the time frame around that is, well, how many years do we have left, even at an organic level, with age group like the boomers who are like approaching retirement or already in retirement now, and really they're running out of runway for that particular demographic. So there's no judgment around that, but the question is, it's really more a source of fascination actually, is how that is going to manifest and take shape, and what structure that will be given in this compressed 3D reality. Because the imploding of the fiat system, the fiat currency system, the fractional reserve banking system, it's completely happening day by day at this point. The currency is being debased. The amount of currency that was printed through quantitative easing, whatever name you want to give to it, money printing, from the COVID era, is now showing up in the expansion of the money supply. And this is irreversible, and it's basically a huge amount of fiat currency or paper currency chasing the same amount of goods and services. So it's mathematical that their inflation is here. The question is, how bad will inflation get? Hyperinflation is about 50% per month. If you had 50% inflation per month for 2 months, that means that everything basically would double and in 2 months, and that is a recipe for total systemic failure. Even if that was wound back somehow, it doesn't really matter at that point. I don't think we're going to have hyperinflation here in Australia anytime soon. Obviously, there's a lot of questions around the US dollar. Trump has just raised the debt ceiling in this big, beautiful bill that he's passed, which was supposed to be a counteract to the whole Doge thing of a measure of austerity and so on. And I'll be talking more about the false light in my annual forecast at the beginning of the year. I said 2025 would be the point of no return. Also made reference to the false light of Donald Trump. People still haven't got the message for that, but his credibility, and even in the MAGA devotees and people looking for the external savior myth, it is declining day by day. I'll go into that, not in this video, but it really is at this point clear that there is no one coming to save us, which is a beautiful thing, because what most people are missing with the chaos that's unfolding is the deep spiritual implications of what actually it means to live through this time. And systemic collapse, although it'll be extremely difficult in many different ways for different people, it's not a collapse as in there won't be any hospitals or there won't be any shops open, this sort of thing. I can't see that occurring, at least in the short term. And on that note, I don't think, as I said last year, I made the statements that there wouldn't be a full-scale nuclear war as most people think. There is obviously going to be regional war occurring in the Middle East, which has already begun. There's no doubt about that. Whether there's mini nukes or some other sort of weapons used, it's uncertain, at least to me. But we will not be allowed as a species to destroy this planet. Whether there'll be some form of divine intervention or intervention from ETs, that it remains to be seen, but there's just no way we'll be allowed to blow up this planet. The stupidity of humans, they think they're in control of this planet, but actually we're not, in more ways than one actually. But moving on from that point, I wanted to say that the pace of events is also accelerating because all the transpersonal planets are moving into air and fire signs, which is less dense, a less dense matter than the earth and the water. Progressively, earth, water, fire, air, and then ether, if you include the 5 elements in that. But it means that the pace of change is going to accelerate. But how are we going to relate to that? And it means that we need to do inner work. I'm running some workshops. There'll be more details in the links in the description. We're basically running a workshop on the Enneagram, which you don't need to know anything about to attend. We do all the testing here, all the typing here at the workshop, and there's no prior experience required. I'm also running another workshop coming up on the schedule, navigating the shift, which is basically for people who are hearing the call of these times that need some concrete tools and some methodology, rather than just sort of being all at sea in despair or gloom, which is pretty problematic for the people who are so-called in the awakening community. That there is a lack of balance, a lack of being centered, and a lack of being understanding these events from a bigger picture and how we navigate them. And this is really what we came to experience, because as I began saying earlier, this whole experience is an invitation for us to actually return to what is divine, what is good, what is pure, what is elevated, and what is eternal. And this means that through the crisis, that people's egos are going to get so tested in a lot of ways, through the the entitlement that's breaking down, through the hopes and dreams that are squashed along the way, through the housing crisis here in Australia. There's a whole melting pot of how that's looking, and it's showing up for pretty much everyone in different ways at the moment. That we're under this pressure cooker where people are simply trying to carry on as normal in many different ways, and yet we're in this systemic failure, which is part of it is by design by the elites and so on, but part of it is at a deeper plan, like it's functioning at a different level. But the invitation is basically a return to God, a return to creative intelligence, a return to divine, a return to the universal intelligence, whatever name you personally can give that or identify with or resonate with. That's really where this, at a much deeper existential, spiritual, esoteric perspective is really what's happening here. And which will actually be the hardest thing of all. Like when people say, oh, wake up, you need to wake up to what's happening with the housing crisis or the inflation or what's going on in geopolitics and all these things. Well, yes, obviously that's impacting our lives a lot. Some people more than others. Other people, it's varied, of course. But what's deeper than that? What is the point of awakening? Just to have more data, just to understand things more at a surface level? No, it's more about how we are contributing to the collective consciousness, how we're influencing it and shaping it ourselves. And this is, again, also going to be very varied. But what needs to be considered is what role do we have to play in this, and how can we elevate our consciousness more? Because that is the highest contribution we can make, because then we are energetically resonating at a high frequency, which it helps neutralize all this negativity, this toxicity, this failed leadership, all these things that we're becoming more aware of. So there's something in that for everyone, and it basically, the idea that we need to connect with the light more and attune to that frequency more. I don't think that's entirely correct, because we need to learn to connect with our own light. And that's it's a nuanced thing, but it's significantly different, because it's much more empowering that I am connecting with my own light. I'm discovering my own light. I'm discovering my own states of empowerment. I'm discovering my own, hero and the hero's journey, if you want to use that metaphor. And this is an empowering, uplifting method and way of perceiving the events. Otherwise, we're coming from a place of victim and being disempowered and helpless and so on. And look, there's good reasons why people are feeling like that and experiencing that. But we have to look at what's constructive and what's beneficial. So really, this inner work thing can't be avoided by anyone. We all know that the institutions are failing, and we all know that everything is basically in a state of turmoil now. And in fact, in 2025, it has increased. Even just here in Australia, I just saw recently that the app X is actually the #1 news app now in Australia. If you go on that is a lot going on there, a lot of people really speaking their mind. And the collective here in Australia is in a state of deep confusion. And God help us after the result of the last federal election, and people are going to get a real wake-up call for what they've voted for. And this is going to be a very, very challenging time for people here in Australia. I can already sense in the collective the pain that people are feeling, and the where people are suffering, how people are suffering, and it's not going to get better in the short term. So we really need to look at how we're going to relate to these objective problems, because how we relate to these things is subjective ultimately. The problem itself is objective, but how we relate to it is subjective. So we see this, and the other thing that I'm seeing, the other big trend is following on from that point, is the bleakness that people are actually experiencing with the coming to terms with the dystopian reality that we're living in now, whether it's homelessness or people losing their jobs, or people literally unable to, young people to buy a house, or even middle-aged people, whatever, because of this crazy, insane housing market here in Australia. And all the social problems that we're experiencing, and the political problems, the economic problems. But remember that they're only a reflection of our inner turmoil collectively. And this is just lost on so much of the conversation around the various challenges we face today is it just doesn't go any deeper than. So I'm not really here to just hook onto the loosh. Should make that clear and the outrage, and something needs to be done, and be sucked into this Hegelian dialect, which is part of the staged op of everything, this psyop of constructed reality and events going on everywhere. Not to say that the real things aren't happening, but it's still all controlled. It really is all controlled. But the point is that, we need to look at things at a deeper level if we're going to change things at a deeper level. Otherwise, we're just rushing from one thing loose to another and not really just getting caught up in this emotional turmoil on a daily basis this year. I mean, the events are happening faster than what I thought. I did say 2025 was the point of no return. It has definitely, we've already gone past that. And the real challenge is that still a lot of the collective are living in 2019, attempting to fabricate this reality where we can go back to 2019. I know a lot of Gen Xers would like to go back to the 80s or the 90s, but to think that everything's going back to normal, it's not. It never will be. We are in systemic decline, and how we go about integrating that and navigating that and co-creating a new future, a new earth, remains to be seen. But that's really the way forward, because at this point we can't rely on anyone to save us, whether it's the government or some spiritual figure or some politician or something. I mean, look at the whole system is completely broken. It really is. And I'll go into this a little bit more in the other videos, but I just wanted to introduce some of these concepts, which I'll go into deeper. And as I said, we can't really just solve some of these systemic problems. The system, the part of the awakening, as I see it, is that the system is just imploding on itself. It's happening in real time, and it is designed to awaken the population to a certain level of consciousness. I don't think everyone will even get there. I mean, there'll be some people who still think the Labor Party's fantastic no matter what happens in the next 5 years. But the majority, like we're talking well over 50%, I think it could be 80 to 90%, something around that. The question then, first question is, okay, so what action is taken to try to not necessarily repair these broken institutions, but replace them or supersede them with like a new model and an upgrade, however you want to think about it. And then, moving forward through this is really what we need to look at, because people's mental health will become more and more challenged in the next over the next 5 years. I mean, it's happening day by day now, but the mental health really needs to be a priority in terms of doing the meditation, in terms of doing the yoga practice, in terms of practicing mindfulness. Like a lot of these techniques, perhaps you already know about, but are you actually doing them? That's the difference between just getting lost in doom scrolling and actually taking your time back, taking your consciousness back, and disconnecting from the loosh. Because the truth is that this reality, as it's been constructed, is designed so many things on different levels to keep us in a lower state of consciousness. That is the fundamental goal. So we can be good little slaves and enjoy our little trinkets of success and have these little badges of success and these moments and whatever. But meanwhile, we're locked in this prison, which is kind of becoming the next level, a digital prison, which is something I'll talk about. There's so many more things to say. I've got a lot of points to go through with this, but Solstice, a beautiful time of the year. I love it. Enjoy. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.